everyone. I'm super excited to hear that you've been working with word sums and word study, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about a word that I understand that you've been looking at. When we're looking to hypothesize a word sum, we first ask ourselves, how do you think the word is built? And what essentially we're looking at here are the morphemes or the parts of the word that we're recognizing from other words that we know. Once we've come up with a good hypothesis, we then have to ask ourselves, what other words share this particular base and or the affixes, the prefix or the suffixes. After you've done that, you may need to revise your hypothesis because it might be that you've thought that this would be a particular base or this would be a particular prefix, but because we can't find any other words that are sharing that guess or that hypothesis, we go back and make revisions. And then the last part, which is my favorite part, is when we get to investigate and share what we've discovered. So I understand that you've been investigating understand. So when I first saw this word, I first thought of it as a compound word where we have two whole words or two free base words coming together to form a new word. So my hypothesis was first that UNDER plus STAND would be rewritten as UNDERSTAND understand. Now, there becomes a point when we're doing word study where things can get a little tricky and we start to see prefixes and suffixes that maybe aren't prefixes and suffixes in this particular word. So you might look at the word under and think, hey, UN looks familiar as a prefix in words like undo, unlucky, unwell. Maybe UN in this case is functioning as a prefix. You might also look at this word under and think ER is a suffix that I know about. It can be an agent, makes an agent noun like a maker, a thinker, a walker. And so that's something I know. However, that would mean that this letter D here would be a bound base. Now, I'm not saying it isn't a bound base, but right now I can't think of any other words where D all by itself is a morpheme that has meaning. I just think it's the letter D. So this can't be my hypothesized word sum because I can't think of anything that would share this letter D as a base. So whenever we're doing things with morphology or word study and you see the little star beside it, that means that that's incorrect. That is not an accurate hypothesis or spelling or idea. So we're going to take that one out. So that leaves us at a place to go and do some investigating with the word understand, wondering if our hypothesis is in fact correct. So we go to our favorite online etymology dictionary, Etymonline, and I type in the word understand. And it pops up here. And the cool thing about these entries is they will often tell you if we're in a position where there are prefixes or suffixes, not always, but often. And whenever you see another bolded word inside of an entry in our online dictionary, you should follow those links. So we see here that this word understand originally came to us from Old English. And I don't speak Old English, so I'm not going to try to pronounce that for you. But it meant to comprehend, grasp the idea of receive from a word or words, or from a sign that the idea is intended to convey or to view a certain way. Probably literally stand in the midst of. So we see here that it does come from under plus standen, which means to stand. So we are correct in our hypothesis so far. What's interesting to me is that he goes on to say that if this is the meaning that we have in the midst of and not the usual meaning, like beneath, right? Like my shoes were under the bed, or you'll find the secret under the blanket, or your head is under your hat. Because it's not following this usual word meaning, I think we're in a position where this under might be functioning as a prefix. Now, this is where things get a little tricky. In the great scheme of things, it doesn't matter whether I've identified under as a prefix or as another base, and this is in fact a compound word. What I find most interesting is that from Old English, they had other meanings for the word under. And in this particular case, it could mean among or between. So if we go back, we have two different words, or two different morphemes making up this word. We have under, meaning between or among, and we have stand, meaning to stand. I've chosen for this particular word to think about under as a prefix. I could have just as easily thought of it as its own free base, because we see it in the words undertake and under the circumstances. So we still have a couple other examples in modern day English that have hung on to this Old English meaning or sense of the word under. So we're not talking beneath, we're talking between or among. So when you understand something, you are standing among the knowledge. You're part of it. You get it. So I think that's a really interesting word to explore. That means we're looking at the STAND, stand family. So we have to ask ourselves, what other words are in the stand family? And at this point, you can pause the video and do some brainstorming to think about what other words might be part of this family. Remembering, of course, to be part of a word family, you need to maintain structure, which is the spelling of the word, and meaning or sense. So all of the words that you're going to brainstorm have something to do with the act of standing. So keep that in mind as you brainstorm your words. Once you've done some brainstorming, you might come up with some words that can be represented in this matrix. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with word matrices yet, but essentially they're a structure that we use to help capture or house a word family. Whenever you see a bold word inside of a word matrix, it means that it is also a base word. So we'd be building a compound word with the word withstand, or standby, or stand still. Those would be example of compound words. However, if I look at the word misunderstanding, I would have two prefixes here, MIS, UNDER, our base, STAND, and then ING, misunderstanding. When we're building words with a matrix, we cannot cross these horizontal lines. So I can't read or put together words by withstand or by under upstand. Those are not words. So we stay within the horizontal lines. And if I want to get over here to this Y, I can't skip what comes before it. Similarly, if I want to use MIS as a prefix, I have to have it, I have to follow it by the UNDER. I can't have misstand as a word in this matrix. It might be a word, but not as represented in the matrix. So then we get to a place with this word, understand, and you might be wondering, what about understood? So we have many examples, and I would challenge you to come up with some that you can think of, where we have what is happening here as a vowel shift. We go from stand to stood to show past tense. And that doesn't make it strange or odd or irregular, because we know in English spelling that sometimes we tense using ed as the suffix to make a past tense, like talk and talked. But there are times when to put something into past tense, we shift the vowels or shift some of the spelling, like the word swim and swam. We don't say swimmed. So to represent stood or understood in this case, we would have past tense written in these little squiggly lines to show that to get from stand to stood, and shifting in the past tense, this is how we represent it. So we're not adding suffixes or prefixes, but there is something happening to the base to get us to the word stood, stood. What I found really interesting when I investigated this word was that up until the 16th century, we were using the word understanded. So it was happening in the spelling for a time where we were adding the ed. Now, why did we go from adding the ed to understood? I'm actually not sure, and I couldn't find that out. But you'll see here in some of the original spellings that there was some shifting happening with the vowels. So understandin and understanden. So that could account for this shift that we saw later on in the 16th century. But I thought it was really interesting that, for a good chunk of time, hearing the word understanded in conversation or written in text was a common occurrence. Now, of course, we have understood. Just a little side note, when we have a case like this, where we've done a vowel shift to move from present tense to past tense, and we're not just adding the ed suffix, understood would not live inside of the matrix. We could set it up beside, so that you understand that understand becomes understood, but we don't put the stood inside of a word matrix. We just set it off to the side. So if you think about this as the house where the word lives, the word family lives, then maybe the past tense that's shifted because with the vowels, maybe it lives in the garage. If you want to think about that, it's close, but it's not in the house. I encourage you to keep hypothesizing word sums by asking yourself how you think the word is built. Here's a trick for you. The easiest way to do this is to start on the outside and work your way in. So let's say I have the word mistaken, as in I've made an error. I thought I saw someone do this thing, but I was mistaken. I saw something else. I start from the outside and work my way in. So the first thing I recognize with this word is MIS as a prefix. So I'm going to circle that as a possibility in this word as a prefix. And I have to ask myself at that point, are there other words that use MIS as a prefix? Other words that might be using MIS as a prefix include misuse, misstep, and mischief. So I think I'm onto something there with MIS being a prefix. At that point, I can either keep going or I can jump to the other end of the word. And when I look at the other end of the word, I can see EN as a suffix that I'm familiar with. And I've seen that that suffix in words like given, weaken, darken. So I'm pretty confident that that is also a morpheme that's part of this word. This would leave me with TAK. And I know there's an E there because otherwise I would have had to double that K when I added the EN. So I know there has to be an E on the end of that base. So my word sum for mistaken would look like this. MIS, that's my prefix. I believe the base is TAKE, as in to take. And EN as my suffix. This is how you would read this word sum. MIS plus TAKE plus EN is rewritten as MISTAK. Replace the EN, mistaken. From here, I can go do some investigating using my favorite online dictionary to see if I've correctly identified these word parts or these morphemes and see what I can discover about other members of the TAKE family. Best of luck as you continue to hypothesize word sums. Keep your questions coming. I'm always happy to help you become better word detectives. Have a great day.